Good evening. My name is Jerome During Bay. This is another episode of Reform Crime Sentencing Now, an affiliate of Reform Crime Sentencing Now.org, better known as RCSNow.org, and Rich Moines Productions, in conjunction with For Lives Matter, who we also affiliate with. And our topic tonight covers a couple of interesting issues that are dealing with the uptick of violence here in the United States, the recent appointment of Kevin McCarthy to the majority member of the House of Representatives, and Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader of the House of Representatives. And we want to speak to those particular issues in conjunction with the recent developments with President Biden and the documents that was alleged to be found on his property, in his possession, while he was a member of the vice presidency. We hope to be able to correlate our dialogue to address some of the issues that are coming about dealing with sentencing reform. And a few of the names, Kevin McCarthy, Hakeem Jeffries, President Biden, those names have a direct impact on how sentencing reform will be developed during this particular term. Now, naturally, gun violence raises a lot of concern, or violence in general raises a lot of concern here in the United States, because there's an uptick in it, but there's nothing new under the sun. And conditions in our society bring about a lot of stress, anger, strife, disappointment, frustration, and it causes people to act out in ways that can sometimes be considered as violent. And I would have to say that I'm somewhat shocked about the recent uptick in violence in the United States, because during my lifetime I've never seen it at the degree that it's being exposed at now. That might be just due to the apparatuses that the media has and is able to get more of these stories out here to the public. But the concern that I have is this here. There's a lot of people are talking about this uptick in violence. It's on all the talk shows, the media has it, the radio shows have it. Everybody's talking about this violence here in America. And that has a direct effect upon sentencing reform. Now, individuals that are serving nonviolent sentences that are currently incarcerated, there's nothing that you can actually do about that, even though you have a nonviolent sentence. Your family members can only lobby their representatives to continue to support legislation that will provide resources and reentry programs to individuals who are serving nonviolent sentences. And when you got individuals out here that are suffering the conditions that they're suffering under and are committing the type of crimes that they're committing, putting the community at risk, legislators are slow to act upon sentencing reform because it's a bad look. And you shouldn't be to blame, you or your families, for the conduct and actions of other people. But I've given this much thought over the last 2 or 3 months, and when I was younger, I would have to say that the way the dialogue has been going today, I would totally have pushed back on that. But I'm looking at it for what it is. A lot of community organizations, a lot of legislators, a lot of schools, a lot of independent people have maintained a role in trying to be preventive in this particular area. And after given all this dialogue I have heard, much consideration, I have not heard one plan that would eliminate or alleviate the current trend in violence here in the United States. Doesn't mean that it can't be stopped. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I haven't heard a plan that adequately or effectively meets that particular need. And a lot of resources have been put out there into the community to try to get the community involved through the organizations that are receiving this funding to try to develop the appropriate steps to curtail this type of action. But when you look at it for what it is, a lot of it is a result or derived from domestic abuse, when an individual is, having issues with their significant other, and it ends up in a tragedy. You have a lot of youth that are stumbling up on firearms that their parents own, or that are illegally owned, and they're committing violent conduct, without having no clear understanding of what that's going to lead to. Des Moines, where we're located, has suffered a rash of violent conduct, and I've known 2 or 3 of the individuals. I've worked with them, and it's just astounding to me that individuals are taking on the mindset to allow themselves to fall prey to the frustrations, the stress, the anger, the addictions that they might be embracing at that particular point in time. And it's unfortunate that we as a society are unable to attend to those particular needs. Like I said, a lot of the media is talking about developing more resources to address this particular concern. I don't know by putting resources behind this if that would even prevent this uptick. It just seems like people are at the wit's end to dealing with the problems that they're faced with in our society today, and that's unfortunate. I know there's a lot of, like I said, community organizations that are trying to develop programs and resources to address this issue, but again, not to belabor the issue, I just think that from my own opinion, my own personal opinion, that due to the conditions that our society is faced with, that the frustration levels are just at the point to where that they're boiling over. Now, I don't like to verbally or mentally support an ideal that has been detrimental to the growth of my community. But law enforcement states that what they have recognized and acknowledged is a lot of the gun violence and violence that has been occurring is a direct result of drugs. So if this is the narrative that's being put out by law enforcement, eventually it's going to be the narrative that's being picked up by politicians and lawmakers. And as a result, this is going to stymie legislation that is being proposed to address nonviolent offenders and sentencing reform and reentry programs. And so I just want to make our audience aware of that particular fact, because we get a lot of calls, we get a lot of texts addressing what's going on with this, what's going on with that. You see that they shelved the Equality Act that we had hoped would be attached to the Omnibus Act prior to the end of 2022 and get passed. And all that basically did was reduce the penalties for controlled substance violations. But again, law enforcement is now espousing that most of the violent conduct that has been occurring here in the United States is directly related to a drug deal gone bad. So we have that narrative again. That was the same narrative that we had in the 70s, in the 80s, and the 90s. Now it's back out front again in the 2022 and 2023. So If you're hopeful for sentencing reform, again, that might be curtailed by the uptick in the violence that's occurring here in America. And the only thing I can say about that is that concern is a vital concern, because a lot of people are losing their lives and being injured due to conduct that's directly related to some of the dialogue that lawmakers and law enforcement is talking about. So that's not to stymie or to diminish your hope in sentencing reform, but there's other factors that weigh into that also, and I want to get into that a little bit. And those factors are, as you see, the Republicans have won the House. They won the House. Kevin McCarthy was finally nominated and elected to the majority speaker. And if you go back and look at his legislation, he hasn't really supported sentencing reform to the degree that a lot of citizens here in the United States would hope that sentencing reform would focus on. So him being the majority of the House and Republicans controlling the members of the House, I don't anticipate this year a lot of bills being passed. They might be proposed, but a lot of bills being passed that are going to impact reducing the sentencing structures for nonviolent offenders. Hakeem Jeffries out of New York is the minority leader. Going over his background, he has supported the reduction of a 100-to-1 ratio and some of the other controlled substances that involved communities of color, especially in the state of New York, where he's from, out of the 8th District. And but he hasn't been really an outspoken proponent on his own merit for that, and he's a minority leader. As things are coming about, I would just have to say that from where I sit, I'm not hopeful that we'll get the type of legislation in 2023 that will reduce some of the draconian sentencing that has taken place over the last 35 to 40 years. Now, Biden has got dirt on his head because they have found some secret documents in his on his property, and as the Democrats went after the Republicans about Trump and those secret documents, now it's going to be a whole bunch of attention paid to the fact that, you know, Biden's in the same position that Trump was in. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. So that's an old saying. So, focus has been deterred based upon the developments that have occurred related to some of these events that are transpiring. But we have to stay vigilant in our focus to maintain our advocacy for restructuring some of these practices in light of the developments that have come about. Because when we have leadership doing things that are questionable, then we need to question them in the same measure as they question the citizen. And the Bill of Rights and the Constitution provides for all of that. But again, in order to advocate that particular stance, citizens have to be conscious of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution in order to advocate to their representatives that, just because you hold a position here in the United States, that doesn't make you special. That doesn't make you above the law. That doesn't make you better than anybody else. You know, we're all human beings. We're all one under the sun. So it's not my intent to give a dour dialogue as it relates to sentencing reform. But keeping it real as Rich Moines Productions for lives, Image for Lives, and rcsnow.org tries to do and provide you with relevant information that deals with some of the issues that we focus on. We just want to make sure that everybody's mindful of these developments. Like I said, it's all over the media. I'm not the only one talking about it. Rich Wayne Production is not the only one talking about it. For Image for Lives is not the only one talking about it. All the media are talking about the events that I just expressed. I may not express it as astutely or as eloquently as some of the more relevant talking heads at this particular point in time, because I'm speaking from a perspective of where I come from. And there's no shame in that to me, or nor am I embarrassed by it. But it is our hope to continue to advocate for sentencing reform, try to develop more than dialogue to prevent the gun violence and the domestic violence that is occurring across the country. You know, we just don't want to talk about it. We've been talking about it for 50 years. And it only got worse and worse. So talk is cheap. So we need to start putting some action behind some of this conversation that we're having, these discussions that we're having. We always want to sit down and have task groups and community organizations and this and that. But the discussion hasn't been prevented. And there's a reason for that. So if discussion is going to come afoot to address some of these concerns that we as a society has, then we need to get the right people at the table so that we can start preventing some of these tragedies that are occurring here in our country. We need to get the right people at the table so that we can establish some sentencing reform to bring home some of these nonviolent offenders who are being punished due to the conduct of individuals that they ain't even associated with, because it's a backlash on them. And they're suffering behind it because legislators don't want to seem soft on crime now, because you got a few people out here committing violent crimes. And so they want to punish everybody for what a few do. Just clearly point that out. You ain't going to take my word for it. But with that being said, I appreciate the time that you have allowed me to come into your home. rcsnow.org appreciates the time that you allow them in your home. My views, again, are not necessarily the views of rcsnow.org, Rich Wayne's Production, or Image for Lives. But we are affiliated in our efforts to try to achieve a result that is productive and progressive for our communities. And we're utilizing the resources and the apparatuses that we have to achieve that particular goal. And with that being said, good night.